Hello, BookTube. I thought I would address a common sentiment that is cropping up in my emails, which is that yesterday's extravaganza, Steve's extravaganza of videos, was a special event for April Adventures. You're not going to be getting 10 videos a day on this channel, okay? You're not. So you can just walk right out of here with that kind of talk. Without your 4 fried chickens, without your dry white toast, and without Matt Guitar Murphy. We will go back to the normal bombardment of videos on this channel, but we will not be doing 10 videos a day. That having been said, I have fallen into the habit of throwing book recommendations at your face, just for the fun of it, just random book recommendations, unconnected to any event, unconnected to any theme. And I enjoy doing it, and you enjoy doing it, so I'm going to do that again today. But even that is not going to be every day. I have been pampering you people. That's got to stop. But first we'll do a few more random recommendations. Like the first one here. This is by Matthew Griffin, and this is a novel called Hyde. It's a gay love story. You got to have something for the gays, and this is the only kind of gay love story that could have happened for 99% of humanity for 99% of humanity's time on Earth. Or at least 99% of humanity's time under a world entirely shaped by Christianity. Because Christianity doesn't like homosexuality. So if you're in a society that is entirely shaped by Christianity, you had better not be openly homosexual. And this is the story of 2 men who meet when they are young. They know immediately what the connection they're feeling is. It's unspeakable, literally. It's something that can't happen. But they both know it, without any doubt. And they decide to pursue it, rather than sublimate or hide from it. They decide to pursue it in seclusion from the world, for pretty much the whole of their lives, until they are old and one of them has an emergency, which forces the other one out into the world. And it's very touching. This is very well done. Don't know if this is still in print, but it is I hate to say it, I hate to call it a corrective, but it is a neat corrective to the again, I don't want to use buzzwords, but it's hard to avoid words like Marxist revisionist history, that says that gay people have always been 90% of the population and they've always been enthusiastically welcome. Haven't you noticed? This is a good corrective to that. This is the kind of gay story that I bet has happened millions of times. And it's touchingly done. Then we have an actual romance. This is not a gay romance. This is a Regency romance. This is by Charis Michaels. It's part of the Bachelor Lords of London series. I think this is number 2 or number 3. And it's delightful. Brutal. Rough-edged at times, but delightful. This is the Virgin and the Viscount, with a typical lovely florid modern Regency cover. You can tell a modern Regency because not only will there be anachronisms with clothing, there's one on this cover, but also one or both of the characters will be semi-naked, which would have been the absolute death knell of your life in public in the Regency era. So you won't get a traditional Regency romance won't have this, but the modern Regencies always do. And the brutal edge of this comes from the fact that the main character is abducted when she's 15 and tossed into a brothel. And it's just a miracle that days later she is saved by a young man who naturally dominates her thoughts ever afterwards. And this is the story of eventually her reconnecting with that young man, who has been changed himself by time and is willing, although not completely informed, to deal with the scars left by her experience. In other words, it's a frothy, fun, modern Regency romance, but it has some heft to it in a way that I like. So it's definitely a recommend. Then we have something that I have recommended on this channel before, but if we're going to do random recommends, there's going to be some doubles. After all, I've only read so many books in my life. This is S.M. Sterling. This is a book from, I don't know, 30 years ago, something like that. It's Dies the Fire. This is turned out to be the first book in a long-running series. Fans love this. The action in this book takes place in the Pacific Northwest, when our main core cast of characters, basically two, and then we get a villain. But the two main characters, we actually know their experiences. With the villain, we don't get to know him intimately, and he's absurd anyway as a figure. There's a lot that's absurd in this book and all the books that follow. But in this book, the two main characters that we really know, and everybody else in the world, experiences a moment of flashing, searing white pain in their heads. And almost before they can even feel it, it's gone. And with it is gone all functioning technology. No technology, no higher technology works at all. Planes fall out of the sky. Buildings go dark. Electric grids stop. And even, one character tries it, gunpowder no longer ignites and stays ignited the way it would. Something, in other words, has monkeyed with the laws of physics to reduce the Earth to 4th century, to pre-all technology. And our character, there's no overview here. Our characters just have to find a way to survive that. Lots and lots of people do not survive that. Good people and bad people. People who are trying to survive and people who are just caught completely off guard. But our cast of characters does survive, barely, and begins to try to figure out what is the reason for this change with a capital C. The change is what everybody calls it. And also, is it reversible? Is it going to reverse itself? And if it doesn't reverse, well, what kind of world is going to grow up then? You can't expect that a science fiction phenomenon is going to reverse itself and save you, so you have to start living in this world and making your best of it. And these people are modern people. One of the main characters, they are on the cover there, is a trained military personnel. But the others, everybody else, no. They don't have any training to the most important thing of all here will be agriculture, but also building shelters that don't rely on electricity, but that still keep out the cold, etc., etc., etc. S.M. Stirling, this book is terrific, absolutely terrific. I think all the books in the series are terrific, but boy, do they geek out after here. Like crazy they do. This is, one critic decades ago put it very aptly, that this is the geek shall inherit the earth. This is the villain, for Pete's sake, is a member of the Society for Creative Anachronisms. The whole idea of his rise to villainhood is that he, unlike most of his civilized compatriots, knows how to use medieval weapons. Utterly ridiculous. It is a geek's dream of eventually coming out on top. And it gets sillier and sillier as a kind of weird quasi-Gaelic medieval Arthurian chivalry feudalism takes place. Grows up out of nowhere when that absolutely would not happen without the mortar that made that possible, which was Christianity. Without that, it absolutely would not happen again. How are you going to convince 100 people to work drudging, anonymous, dangerous architecture jobs, hauling stones and laying mud and mortar for your bad guy castle that the bad guy has in record time in this series? How are you going to convince 100 people to do that? Half of them you're going to have to kill. Half of anybody you demanded to be less than you in a world that's suddenly flat of distinction. Half of them you're going to have to kill. It won't happen. Unless you have the church. Unless you have Christianity. And these people don't. The later volumes get silly because they just assume that this fantasy Arthurian round table nonsense is going to develop on its own. And, of course, naturally, me being me, I saw another problem with a lot of these books, which is that one factor that Stirling does not take into account at all is dogs. He doesn't take it into account at all. There are bears in a couple of volumes of this book, of the series, but not dogs. Dogs never come up. But it's wonderful. This is absolutely wonderful. Of course, this first book, Dies the Fire, was written before our lives became science fiction. This was written before we all not only had advanced technology on our persons at all times, but completely lived for it. So it already feels a little strange. It already feels like an alternate reality. Very, very good series, though. If you haven't found it, It's good. It's a good series. Then we have, this is an old omnibus volume. Marvel Comics makes big hardcover omnibus volumes. And they're fairly indiscriminate about what they do with those. ROM. They're fairly indiscriminate about their omnibus volumes. They basically reprint anything. The main reason why they do that is because their money crunchers have realized that that reprint volumes sell, and that their modern comics don't at all sell. Because the modern comics that they're making are aimed for an audience that does not in fact exist. Whereas the reprint volumes were aimed for an audience that was solicited and cared for and cheered on and encouraged and listened to. So you get a lot of omnibus volumes, but some of them actually do commemorate amazing gems. And this is one of them. This is from the founding era of Stan Lee Marvel Comics. And this is the old Marvel omnibus of Doctor Strange. This is a story of an arrogant New York doctor, a surgeon, Stephen Strange, who gets into a car accident. His hands are destroyed or largely ruined for finer manipulation. He can probably still open a can, but he can't operate anymore. And he lives for his power as God in the operating table, so that ruins him. He's told you could consult, and he won't have it. And it ruins him. It wrecks him. And he starts to wander around a seedy bum, not knowing what he's looking for, until finally he hears stories about the Ancient One in the far mystic Himalayas, who could perhaps heal his hands. So he goes looking, and he finds the Ancient One, but it turns out he finds a whole new life. The Ancient One does not heal his hands, importantly. Instead, the Ancient One inducts him as a disciple to learn the mystic arts. And eventually, Stephen Strange becomes Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth. And the initial run of Doctor Strange was written by Stan Lee and drawn by Steve Ditko at the absolute height of his power. Ditko also did the initial run on Spider-Man, but Spider-Man is a brightly costumed action hero, and he's quirky, of course, in those early issues, but that is not Ditko's strength. Whereas Doctor Strange, something like Doctor Strange, is exactly Ditko's strength. And it's the perfect marriage of writer, concept, and artist. The perfect marriage. In the initial launch of superheroes and superhero concepts for Marvel Comics, Doctor Strange is one of the only perfect launches. One of the only things that is just wonderful from the beginning. That, in fact, you could lay a claim that this volume, this omnibus, is the best that Doctor Strange ever was. You could actually make a claim for that. I don't claim it. Later on, the artist Gene Colan did a run on Doctor Strange that I think is better than this, but I'm in the minority there. Most comic book fans would say that the Lee Ditko era is the pinnacle of Doctor Strange. And this volume has them all. In nice, big, generous-sized pages, really sturdy binding. I don't know if there is currently an omnibus of Doctor Strange from Marvel. I know that the first printing of this omnibus is probably collectible, but worth it in this case. Then we have, this is edited by Deirdre Lynch. This is one of a series of annotated Jane Austen that I think was done by the Belknap Press of Harvard University Press. And this is the annotated Mansfield Park. These are, they're hardcover volumes, but they are a little wider than a normal hardcover, probably to accommodate the annotations, because this has the text of the novel, and then in a generous margin, it has whatever annotations that page calls for. And when it comes to Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, my line has always been to anybody who looks at the various annotated editions that they've been, that you don't need an annotated edition to read and love Pride and Prejudice. You don't need that. Once you read it, once you've read it a few times and you really love it, you might really like an annotated edition. You might find it fun. But the problem that I have with annotated editions is that they often are thought of and sometimes even bill themselves as necessary. And they aren't. In the case of Jane Austen, they aren't. Although, if you're going to have an annotated Jane Austen, I think you need it for Mansfield Park more than anything else in order to really get what's going on. And this is excellent. This whole series is excellent. I don't know what that whole shelf of these would be. I once had that whole shelf until I realized that when I wanted to read Northanger Abbey or Sense and Sensibility or whatever, I was just going to the book on the shelf. I wasn't going to the annotated edition, so I got rid of them. I kind of wish I hadn't. I got rid of them before BookTube, and I kind of wish I hadn't, because they'd make a very nice gift to somebody. Then we have historical fiction. This is Susanna Dunn. This is The Queen of Subtleties. This is her novel of Anne Boleyn, the second wife of England's King Henry VIII. The wife that enticed him away from his rightful queen, Catherine of Aragon, by promising him the one thing Catherine could not give him, which is a living, legitimate male heir. So Anne was not content to be a mistress. She was not content to have a bastard. She wanted to be queen, and eventually got her way. And, of course, that was something no one can promise, and she didn't. She wasn't able to deliver it. She delivered a daughter, a healthy daughter, who went on to become, by many people's estimation, the greatest English monarch of them all, Queen Elizabeth I. I myself think that she's the second greatest, and that the greatest also has that same regnal name. But Anne Boleyn has been a lightning rod figure for biographers, historians, and also novelists ever since, because Henry spent a long time wooing her. He got rid of his wife. He changed his nation's church, all for her, and she did not give him a male heir. And he had her executed. He had a Queen of England beheaded. So it's an inherently dramatic story, and Susanna Dunn is great at writing Tudor fiction. I don't know why she's not as well known as Alison Weir or Philippa Gregory or, of course, Hilary Mantel. I don't know why she's not as well known, because she's really, really good. And this is terrific. It's a terrific Anne Boleyn novel. Then we have some YA. This is Crystal Sutherland. Again, I don't know if any of these things are in print or what shape they're in or whether or not they'll look the way they do. But this is Our Chemical Hearts. Rather touching YA. I think YA is a little bit overplayed. I usually don't see much worth in it, but this is about a lovable guy in high school who does not think that he is ever going to have romance. He's just decided that's not in the cards, and he will turn his attention elsewhere. He'll turn his attention to academics. And, of course, in a setup like that, in a YA novel, romance does enter his life. And it's all very predictable, but it's pretty well done. The main problem that I have with most YA is how crushingly condescending it is, and this is not. So I approve of it. Then we have Michael Engelhardt. I've recommended this book before. I don't recommend the subject, but I recommend the book. This is a big natural history and cultural history of the polar bear, ice bear. So this takes you, it has all the earliest Aboriginal representations of the polar bear. It has the earliest representations of polar bears from Westerners who discovered the thing and learned its ways, and also modern accounts from science and natural history of one of the most terrifying animals on Earth. Grizzly bears are huge. They're absolutely gigantic. The big males are like nothing that you imagine. They're like nothing that a nature documentary will prepare you for. And polar bears are bigger and also smarter. And they also, as I have said many times, grizzly bears do not have the ability, despite what you've seen in a certain Anthony Hopkins movie, grizzly bears do not have the ability to appear out of nowhere. They make a lot of noise. They actually, the closer they get to you, the more they actually rumble the ground when they're walking on it. Polar bears have the disconcerting ability to appear out of thin air, out of a wide open horizon of thin snow blowing over rock. So you would think that a squirrel couldn't hide. You're doing a 360 and you're thinking a squirrel couldn't hide in that because it's open ground. And then you do a 360 again and there's a polar bear right there, weighing a ton, standing 10 feet tall. That's very disconcerting. They also are patient hunters. Grizzly bears are not. And they're canny. They know how to figure out a situation. Grizzly bears tend not to do that. They just rely on homicidal force. So when it comes to land, I mean, there are scarier things that you can meet. Hippopotamus, for instance, it is a pretty scary thing to meet. A rhinoceros, if you can manage to get its attention, is pretty scary. And also, we don't like to think about it. We tend not to put it in this category, but the scariest animal on land that you can possibly meet is an elephant, a full-grown African elephant. It's just not, your senses don't take it in. Nothing that you have seen, if you've never seen an elephant, a full-grown African elephant, nothing can prepare you for what it will do to your senses. You know they're big, but unless you've been in the presence of one of them, you just And that's on land. And then, of course, in the ocean, you've got even greater terrors. But as far as something that you're likely to, of course, an elephant is not going to hunt you. And a rhino is not going to hunt you. And a hippo is not going to hunt you. All three of them are Pleistocene leftovers that can have bad tempers, and it only takes a tiny brush with any of them to die. But even a really cranky, cracked in the head, older male elephant is probably not going to make an issue out of you. If you can avoid him, he'll probably avoid you. Whereas polar bears will hunt you. And this, sorry, I don't mean to go on a digression, a personal digression. But in terms of studying these animals, this is a really good book. Then we have something, I wanted to recommend this to you, and I went for a picture on, all these are pictures that I took offline, and had an amazing discovery. This is, Robert Ballou is the editor, and this is the Viking Portable World Bible. And the amazing discovery is that this exists, this cover. This is a trade paperback of the Viking Portable World Bible. I had no idea. I thought the Viking Portable line were these old mass market paperbacks. They're really good anthologies, really good editions of their various authors. And this is one of their original creations that I have only ever seen in a mass market paperback. I had no idea that it made the jump to trade paperback. This is sacred texts from the world's major religions, alive and dead. This is sacred texts from them. In workable, serviceable translations in a nice, handy volume. I am, of course, a vocal opponent of religious indoctrination of children in schools, which is at a rampant rate now in the United States, and that rate is about to double and quintuple. It's about to become almost impossible for you to opt out of religious education, Christian education of children in America. I'm dead set against that. I'm dead set against doing anything like that with your child. You absolutely should not be christening your child. Just give them a legal name, but do not give them a religious ceremony. You absolutely should not baptize your child. Baptism is induction into a faith. Faith is a personal decision. Your child can't make a decision like that. You don't baptize your child. You don't confirm your child if you're a Catholic. You don't do anything like that. You leave the religious decisions for them to make when they're adults and can make them on their own in an informed way. And of course, the reason that isn't done is because if you did that, there would be no more religion of any kind. In 2025, if you sent your kid to grade school and he wasn't indoctrinated in any kind of religion in any way, just this is the world that you can see on your phone. So there was an earthquake in Sumatra. Well, let's look at it on our phone. Oh, so there was somebody burned somebody alive in Thailand. Well, let's take a look at it on our phone. Oh, that's kind of weird. I wonder why they did that. Well, TASS says this, and UPI says this, and here's another reason why. And there are a few videos on it now on YouTube, and some of those YouTubers I like. Where in any of that is God or any gods? It's nowhere. They're nowhere, and they never would be. Is my point. They never would be. Your 8-year-old, your 10-year-old, your 15-year-old, they literally would never even think about whether or not Vishnu wants them to eat fish. They wouldn't even think about it. It wouldn't even cross their mind to think about it if you didn't indoctrinate them. And I, of course, am therefore a vocal opponent of religious indoctrination, but I am a vocal proponent of teaching every student, give every student in the world a copy of this book. As early as possible. Give it to them when they're 10 years old. Give everybody in the world a copy of this book. These are the sacred texts of all of the various major religions in the world. It's like Dan Dennett used to say, I'm against indoctrinating children into religion, but definitely teach them about religion. And that is never going to happen. Because the major religions of the world know that if they did that, they'd have no one in the temples and the mosques and the churches when that generation grew up. The attendance would go from the paltry level that it's at now to literally zero in one generation. So they know that will never do this, but this book would do it. I've done it before, and it is a revelation, no pun intended, to read this just straight through from front to back. Instead of picking and choosing the religions that interest you, just read it like a book from front to back. I can tell you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it didn't happen to me. Fortunately, this was never an issue with me, but it's happened to friends of mine. I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that if you read this book from front to back, the one conclusion you will have when you're done is not that your indoctrinated religion is the right one. The one conclusion you will have at the end of this book is that all of this is made up. You can't miss it when you read them all together like this. Anyway, my next recommendation is a Penguin Classic. the big fat penguin classic that you want to leave that for your daily penguin, but they can show up in these videos too. You people want these random book recommendations, you'll get whatever I give you. But anyway, this is the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, but this is a particular Penguin edition. Penguin, of course, has made bank on Neville Coghill's rendition of the Canterbury Tales into modern English. Neville Coghill did that, what? I don't even know. 60 years ago? 70 years ago? And it has been reprinted a million times in a million different editions, and I think it's still in print from Penguin. And it's also good. Coghill is good. He modernizes Chaucer's English to make it a little less foreign to the reading eye, and he does a good job, and I think a faithful job. I like the Neville Coghill Chaucer, but Chaucer doesn't need a translation. He's writing in English. It's an older kind of English, but it is well within your grasp to learn it without any class, without any academia. And this book is that. This is not the Neville Coghill. This is Chaucer as Chaucer wrote it, with the text and then annotations on the side to immediately show you what this weird word is. And some lines of Chaucer have more of that than others, but I guarantee you, if you start reading Chaucer the way he wrote it in this volume instead of the Neville Coghill, it won't be 2 or 3 reading sessions before it's starting to feel normal to you. It's not as alien as it seems, not at all. And once you are comfortable with it, once it's familiar to you, once it doesn't feel like you're reading a weird version of English, you will see what is missing from the Neville Coghill and the Peter Ackroyd and any other modernization of Chaucer. You'll see it readily. You don't need to take a class on this. This is your language. It's just an older version of it. But the thing that is missing from those modernizations is the exquisite wordplay that Chaucer often does. That is utterly that kind of wordplay utterly relies on its original in situ language context. There's no way to bring those subtleties forward or over to a later version of the same language or a different language. So my point is, you are gaining something by reading Chaucer in the original. I'm not insisting on it. The Neville Coghill and a few other modernized English Chaucers will give you 90% of the sheer joy and wonder of this author. 90%. That's a high amount. That's a hell of a lot higher than most translations will give you. All I'm saying is that other 10% is well within your grasp. It's not a question of, I don't know Chaucer's language, so I have to read a translation. It's not like that at all. And the Penguin does a very good service to its readers by bringing out this big volume. Then we have another big volume. This is Robin Lane Fox, and he's a classicist, and this is his biography of St. Augustine, who somehow demoted from sainthood on the cover of the book. This has, those of you who are familiar with St. Augustine will know that this has a major competitor, a major earlier biography that was widely heralded, widely called by critics the greatest biography of this figure that is possible to imagine, other than perhaps the one that St. Augustine wrote himself. And Robin Lane Fox knows that perfectly well. That earlier biography haunts this one. But this is still really good. This is a powerhouse thinker and a very good writer. And there's no law that says you can't have 2 biographies of St. Augustine, right? There's no law that says that. Of course, before you read either the Fox or the Brown, before you read either one of them, you should be reading St. Augustine. At the very least, you should know the Confessions. Not just read it once, but know it. Read it so that you're familiar with it. But if you're looking for a biography, this later one is really good and takes into account a lot of later research. And then we can finish up with an anthology. This is edited by Steve Parker. This is Evolution, the whole story. And this is the grounding of the whole theory of evolution by means of natural selection that was put forward by Charles Darwin in 1859. But also all the stuff that has followed. The huge amount of stuff that has followed. Science deniers, 2/3 of the adults in my country, the United States, deny almost all science. They say that autism is caused by ordinary vaccines. They say that the sun goes around the earth. They say that the earth is flat. They say that ghosts are real. They say that you name it, and they believe it. They don't believe in actual science. And the number one thing they don't believe is evolution. They don't believe that that life forms today all evolved from common ancestors millennia ago. They especially don't believe that humans evolved from anything less than what we are now, or different from what we are now. No, humans were created by their gods. And those people, when you talk to them on this subject, will always refer to Darwin's Origin of Species as though it were a Bible. Because if it's faith against faith, they're suddenly comfortable. They know how to do that. When it's not true, as many evolutionary biologists have said in the last 30 years alone, Darwin could never have existed at all. He could never have written The Origin of Species or any of its revised editions, and it still wouldn't matter. Genes tell us what we need to know about evolution without any Darwin. So this is the story of Darwin, yes, but of all the stuff that's happened since. Good Lord, all the stuff that's happened since. This is an older book. I think this is like 15 years old, so the story has moved on. But if you're looking for a one-volume overview of the basics, this will do quite nicely. It has the benefit of having a number of different narrative tones, so that helps to keep it readable. And there you go. That is your day's barrage of random-ass book recommendations. No idea what these videos are. No idea how I know how I got into this. This whole trouble was started, the way all trouble on BookTube is, by Christopher Russell. But it's metamorphosed, it's mutated since then. It's the cordyceps virus. So will we keep them up? I don't know. I'll think about it. And I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.